In 1492, Christopher Columbus discovered the Americas. It's hard to think of a man quite as controversial throughout history. We all know that Hitler was bad, and we all know that Leonardo da Vinci was good, but Columbus's legacy drifts somewhere in the murky waters of morality. From sparking the end of the Dark Ages and laying the foundations for the Renaissance, to introducing smallpox to natives and paving the way for the transatlantic slave trade. In today's video, we are going to be asking ourselves, was Christopher Columbus a hero or a villain? Stick around to the end as we uncover a shocking fact about Columbus that most people don't know. Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we are going to be diving into the life and legacy of Christopher Columbus and asking the controversial question, was he a hero or a villain? This discussion will be split into two parts. First, we're going to examine the positive impacts of Columbus and his accomplishments. And then we're going to be looking at the darker aspects of his legacy. To understand Columbus's significance, we need to first understand European society at the time. After the fall of Constantinople in 1453 to the Ottoman Empire, it became increasingly difficult for Europeans to access the lucrative trade routes to the east. The Ottomans imposed heavy taxes and restrictions on European merchants, forcing them to seek alternate routes to valuable commodities like spices, silk, and gold. This further destroyed the European economies, particularly the Western European economies such as Britain, France, Germany, Italy, Spain, and Portugal. In addition to this, the Islamic Barbary slave trade posed a significant threat to Europeans, with an estimated 1.5 million Europeans captured and sold into slavery over several centuries. It might seem strange today to say that Europe was oppressed by the Islamic world, but back then the tables were turned. The Muslim world was far more advanced and richer than the Christian world, with Europeans rightly feeling mistreated. In response, European powers, especially Portugal, began to explore sea routes around the coast of Africa in an effort to reach India and the Far East. This was a long and dangerous journey, often plagued by navigational challenges and the threat of piracy. This paved the way for the Age of Exploration. Against the backdrop of economic hardship and uncertainty, Christopher Columbus emerged with a bold proposition: to reach Asia by sailing west across the Atlantic. Now, contrary to the popular myth that people in the Middle Ages believed that the Earth was flat, most educated Europeans at the time, including Columbus, knew that the Earth was round. However, Columbus greatly underestimated the actual size of the Earth's circumference. Influenced by the writings of ancient scholars like Ptolemy and the calculations of later thinkers such as Paolo Toscanelli, he believed that Asia was much closer than it actually was, which fueled his confidence in the westward voyage. Ironically, if Columbus actually knew the size of Earth at the time, he would have probably said screw that and just stayed home. Columbus petitioned several European monarchs, including Portugal and England, before finally securing the support of King Ferdinand of Spain. In 1492, the king agreed to sponsor his expedition, providing him with 3 ships, the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. In return, Columbus promised to bring back wealth, spices, and even potential slaves for the Spanish crown. Now, slavery is probably the biggest criticism of Columbus, but in his defense, he was basically fulfilling his contractual obligation to his boss. Does this make him good? Well, no, not really. Slavery is wrong regardless of whether or not it's your job. But let me ask you this. Before you judge Columbus from your futuristic high horse, ask yourself this. Do you have a smartphone? Was that phone made in a sweatshop by what is most likely child labor? What about the clothes that you're wearing? Who made those? How about your food? Who gathered your food? Even today, we are tacitly supporting evil in our everyday purchases. So before you cast stones at Columbus, perhaps we should all look within, myself included. So let's look at Columbus's achievements. The impact of Columbus's voyages cannot be overestimated. His discovery of the Americas in 1492 marked the beginning of what is known as the Age of Exploration, a period that would dramatically change the course of world history. The opening of new lands provided Europe, especially Western Europe, with opportunities for unprecedented growth and expansion. Over the coming centuries, Europe would transition from the Dark Ages into the Renaissance and ultimately into global domination, from the poorest part of the world to the richest part of the world in a matter of centuries due to Columbus. The United States and Canada and all of their subsequent accomplishments, such as the moon landing, would not have been possible without the butterfly effect of Columbus's voyage. Columbus's expedition also led to the Columbian Exchange, a widespread transfer of goods, ideas, plants, and animals between the Old World and the New World. Foods such as potatoes, maize, tomatoes, and even tobacco were introduced to Europe, drastically improving diets and boosting populations, apart from tobacco. In turn, Old World goods such as wheat, horses, coffee, and sugarcane were brought to the Americas, transforming indigenous ways of life. The economic significance of these exchanges cannot be overstated, as they fueled European economies and played a key role in shaping the modern world. Now, I know what some of you are going to say, but Columbus didn't discover America, the Vikings did. Well, yeah, okay, but they didn't really do anything with it, did they? So it's not really relevant. Also, if there were already people there, how can it be a discovery? Look, let's not get bogged down with semantics here. Before Columbus, nobody other than the natives knew that America was there, okay? Beyond economic and geopolitical changes, Columbus himself demonstrated an extraordinary level of courage and determination. Imagine stepping onto a wooden ship with only a compass and setting sail into uncharted waters with absolutely no guarantee of survival. Columbus faced extreme challenges such as storms, mutinies, and a constant fear of the unknown. Despite all of this, he persevered and succeeded in reaching the New World. His bravery and vision made him a hero in the eyes of many Europeans, who saw his journeys as a triumph of human ambition and resilience. However, Columbus's legacy is far from universally celebrated. His arrival in the Americas marked the beginning of a dark and painful chapter for the indigenous peoples. Now, while it's important to avoid judging historical figures solely by modern standards, even in his own time, Columbus's actions raised significant moral and ethical concerns. The indigenous Taino people, whom Columbus encountered in the Caribbean, suffered greatly under his rule. His policies led to forced labor, harsh punishments, and brutal exploitation of the native populations. While it is true that the majority of indigenous deaths resulted from the spread of European diseases such as smallpox, something Columbus could not have foreseen, that was not his fault, his treatment of the native peoples were undeniably abhorrent. Enslavement, violence, and forced tribute systems took a devastating toll, and millions perished in the following decades. Columbus was even a manipulator. In 1504, Columbus forced the natives to feed his men by pretending to be a god, stating that if they did not do his bidding, he would make the sun disappear. This was made possible as Columbus knew that there would be a lunar eclipse. Now, does that make him evil? Maybe. I mean, if his men were starving, what was he supposed to do? Sometimes you have to do what you have to do to survive, but it definitely doesn't make him a good guy. Columbus's actions set a powerful precedent for further European conquest, laying the foundations for the widespread colonization of the Americas. His voyages demonstrated vast potential for wealth and resources across the Atlantic, motivating Spain and other European powers such as Britain to pursue aggressive expansion. Now, whilst colonization is not necessarily evil, the manner in which it was carried out was not always honourable. The destruction of the Aztec and Inca empires, driven by figures like Hernan Cortés and Francisco Pizarro, can be traced back to Columbus's initial contact. The influx of European settlers and the exploitation of indigenous lands followed, with native populations suffering displacement forced labour, and cultural erosion. While Columbus himself did not orchestrate these later conquests, his expeditions marked the beginning of a relentless pursuit of dominance and wealth in the New World. Additionally, Columbus's discoveries inadvertently set the stage for the transatlantic slave trade. As indigenous populations declined due to disease and harsh conditions, European colonies turned to the enslavement of Africans to meet their labour demands in the Caribbean and the Americas. The plantation economy that emerged fueled global trade networks, enriching European nations at the cost of immense human suffering. Though Columbus did not personally initiate the full-scale transatlantic slave trade, his voyages were the catalyst that made such exploitation inevitable. His legacy is therefore a complex and controversial one, celebrated for his daring exploration, but criticised for opening the door to centuries of oppression and exploitation. Even during his lifetime, Columbus faced criticism. Spanish officials accused him of mismanagement and mistreatment of both indigenous peoples and the Spanish settlers in the colonies. Now, do you remember in the beginning of the video when I promised you an interesting fact about Columbus? Well, here it is. Upon arriving back in Spain in 1500, Columbus was arrested and brought back in chains for his brutal treatment of the European colonizers and also the natives, though he was later pardoned and allowed to continue his explorations. So, was Columbus a hero or a villain? Well, the answer is complicated. On the one hand, his achievements in exploration and his role in shaping the modern world cannot be denied. His voyages connected continents and cultures in ways that were previously unimaginable. His legacy is celebrated by millions today. Columbus Day, observed in the United States, is a testament to his enduring legacy. He was probably the most important European, getting Europe out of the Dark Ages. Europe was not in a good place before the discovery of America. On the other hand, though, his actions, both directly and indirectly, led to immense suffering that we cannot deny. The indigenous peoples of the Americas paid a heavy price for European expansion, and to them, Columbus represents the beginning of centuries of mistreatment. Furthermore, Columbus was the springboard for the transatlantic slave trade, which enslaved over 15 million Africans. The world has never been the same since. Ultimately, Columbus can be seen as both a hero and a villain. For Europeans, he was a daring explorer who opened up a new world of possibilities. But for Native Americans, as well as the African slaves, his arrival marked the beginning of profound loss and hardship. One thing I will say though is that not since Jesus Christ has one human being been so impactful on history. Christopher Columbus remains one of the most debated figures in history. His legacy is complex, filled with both triumph and tragedy. So, what do you think? Was Columbus a visionary hero or a ruthless conqueror? Or both? Let me know in the comments section. Also, I understand that this is a very hot topic and people can often have extreme opinions, but please, let's try to be respectful, shall we? If you've enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you for watching and have a great day.